Welcome everyone to the 10th session of the Schoolyard Forest Design Lecture Series. Our host today will be myself, Lauren McKenna, and I'm supported by Allison Torres, our Green Schoolyards America Operations Manager, and Alejandra Chiesa, our Vice President. And you might see some of our other staff in the participant list as well. Today's agenda will include some introductions from us, some resource sharing, a presentation by our guest speakers on schoolyard food forests, followed by some Q&A time with our speakers. This series is a part of the National Schoolyard Forest System, whose goal is to increase tree canopy and shade students from extreme heat. We are glad that you are here because we know that many of you are doing this work. So thank you for your time and attention and care about this. I want to share just a few resources with you. In our National Outdoor Learning Library, we have a whole chapter that relates to today's topic on school gardens. There are many resources here. One thing that we don't have as much about is resources on food growing trees, but we are going to learn a little bit more about that today. And we're constantly expanding our library and always happy to get suggestions for resources that you would like to see added. Here are also some colleagues of ours that are doing this work. Again, we know there are people all over the country spearheading this work of creating school gardens. There is a resource in our online library from LifeLab, who is based in Santa Cruz. They've been at work for over 40 years, and they're a leader in garden-based education. They have a lot of great professional development trainings and guidance. The School Garden Support Organization Network is an incredible wealth of knowledge and peer-to-peer learning. And among our own staff, Rachel Pringle co-authored How to Grow a School Garden. Great book. I hope you will check it out. You might be able to find some used copies. I believe it is out of print now. And then we also want to share some colleagues of ours in the Rialto Unified School District in Southern California. And they did a presentation as part of our community of practice on the work that they're doing. And they have been and are creating many school orchards in their district. So please check out their case study to learn more in detail about how they did that. There's also a recording of that presentation and a link to a student-created tree database. It's a GIS story map. And a special note that they have been leaders and great examples on how to address maintenance and long-term planning. So we look to their example for sure. Just some reminders about this lecture series itself. Our meeting today will be recorded, so there will be a recording publicly available to you and your friends who aren't able to join today. Our next lecture will be same time, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, October 3rd. We are excited to feature colleagues from the EPA and HIFA Design who will address air quality impacts in schoolyards, especially those that are doing greening and planting at schools that are exposed to near road air pollution. So please invite your friends and colleagues, and we'll see you next time. And again, in the link, you can also see recordings of all of our past webinars and upcoming dates. Okay, so on to today's topic. Our guest speakers today will introduce various aspects and the potential of schoolyard edible forests and food producing trees. All of these are, of course, a part of a living schoolyard. As part of this series, we'd be totally remiss to not talk about trees and vegetation that produce food as part of a schoolyard forest. Our guests will share examples of how these spaces not only grow food, but also grow nutrition and education opportunities, food security, and shade, all while fostering community. We will hear from a Bay Area, California-based garden educator and a team from Miami-Dade County in Florida. Wanda Stewart is now the executive director for Common Vision. She was the executive director for People's Grocery and then served as Hoover Elementary's garden educator in Oakland, where she created one of the most impressive school gardens in California. She is a trusted voice and community member in East Bay's permaculture and food justice movements. She brings together bright minds and green thumbs. She's also a board advisor for the UC Alameda County Master Gardeners, supporting school gardens through localized community resources. She's a lifelong gardener who has mentored thousands in building gardens and growing food. Welcome, Wanda. Debi LaBelle is a trained chef with 20 plus years of experience. Her knowledge of nutrition and unique crops has propelled the program forward that she will be sharing about today. She has collaborated with Miami-Dade County Public Schools Department of Food and Nutrition to advance the Garden to Cafeteria initiative in Miami-Dade County. Debi's skills allow her to work effectively with teachers, students, parents, as well as cafeteria personnel. And Eddie Recinos is also over 20 years of experience in urban vegetable gardening with a focus on perennial vegetables for low maintenance school gardens. He has 11 years of experience as a teacher with Miami-Dade County Public Schools and a background in design. He is currently the program director for the Education Fund's Food Forests for Schools program through Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Welcome, Wanda, Debi, and Eddie. I will pass it off to Wanda.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I'm Wanda Stewart. I'm calling you literally from outdoors at the Prescott Elementary School, the new garden that we're growing in West Oakland, not quite yet a food forest, but you can make a forest out of straw flowers. Who knew? I want to share my screen because I want to tell you the story of Hoover Elementary. Thank you for calling it impressive. Is perhaps my proudest thing. I've been working in schools for 30 years or so, and I'm thrilled with what this garden became. The Hoover Garden is located in West Oakland. It's a very culturally significant and historical section of the city. For those in other places in the country, it's in during the time when the Loma Prieta earthquake happened in 1989 and the bridge fell down. We are blocks away from where that happened. So it's a neighborhood that's deeply impacted by the environment. We're surrounded by 3 freeways and just a lot of social unrest in these early days. But this garden didn't just grow food. It did become a forest, or it has become a forest. And in fact, it grew a community. So actually, this mural captures that garden on the wall, right around the corner from there. I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all the people on whose shoulders I stand and why this motivates me in the work that I do. And it's not just about Black folks and Indigenous folks. It's about all the people that have worked this land with their bodies, no matter their ethnicity, gender, race, religion. But those 4 Black women up there, all of them are over 110 years old. This was at an ex-slave convention. And I realized when I saw this picture that I come from really strong stock. And that stock is amazing because they ate healthy food, because they had essential community with one another. because they had to motivates me today for the world to come. But this lady, Victory Lee, I named the school garden at Hoover Elementary after her. She was a remarkable gardener. She was a master gardener, but her passion was teaching children. And she insisted right before she died that I continue her work. And I do so in her name, again, on her shoulders. Um, this story of Hoover as an individual garden begins honestly with the death, a really sad death of Tony Ramos, who was painting a mural a block away from the school and was shot dead for his camera. And Tony Ramos happened to be one of my students from when he was in high school. That's his sister Alana, a friend to this day. But I include these pictures because more than any tree, more than any plant, what is most important and what has grown most in this garden is community. So as I flip through these pictures, I want to give you an opportunity or invite you to look into the background and watch the garden across time. Um, don't get stuck by the faces, which is where I get stuck. But this garden, when I got there, had a pergola, had maybe 30 fruit trees planted, in part by Common Vision and an organization called Growing Together. Those sunflowers were added early on, and now watch what grew. I started off by teaching the kids that if we can grow a garden together, we can cultivate a healthy community. And I promise you that it happens, both in terms of who we invited in and also who came to call it home, including wild creatures like turkeys. It's also important to me that I teach kids rules for a garden that are also rules for themselves. One of the requests was to talk about permaculture. I did get my permaculture certification from the famed Starhawk, and learned most from Starhawk that it is about the social permaculture as well as the garden and food aspects of it and nature aspects. But we work together, not just to grow a garden, but to grow our community. We take and make enough space to let great growth happen. That's not just these crazy pumpkins I'm looking at growing in this garden. That's the kids. I told them I can teach you to grow yourself if you'll come along and grow this garden and do these plants. Using tools of all nature, not just in a garden, and listening closely to both plants and people. We use our gardens not just to grow food, but to grow kids and grow people. But as you see, they got to work. We created structures. Let me say that this garden is pretty large. It was about 150 foot by 150 foot square patch of grassland. We were really lucky that it was not Oakland clay, which is very hard to break up. The original school had been planted in this space. So when they removed that structure, they filled it with agriculture grade soil. And it was a wonderful place to dig and cultivate. You see, we did adobe building. We had kids using power tools. We did a lot of hand watering, but we also dug swales and berms in that permaculture way to collect the water. There was a slightly downward slope so that those water collection methods, those permaculture methods, particularly around trees, was very effective in helping it grow. We also asked the kids a lot about what they wanted. And interestingly, they absolutely said food. When I asked the principal what she wanted, she said, these kids are hungry, we need food. But then the kids also said bling. So we made it important to also bring in glass things and sparkly things, things that look like diamonds. We built amazing teamwork. This is cardboard mulching. So there was Bermuda grass on that grassy patch, right? And so we had to be relentless in spreading mulch. And we would get 39 cubic yards of mulch put down on the playground, which was a massive blacktop. And the kids and I and all our helpers would spread this across the school year. And it became a prize to get it done, to find treasures that I would stick in there. And it also taught them how to work together. So if you can work together to lay that much cardboard, you know how to go back to the classroom and cooperate with that teacher to take that testing, right? To let your other kids learn, even if you can't. So the kids learned a lot. The relationships and the life lessons mattered. I will tell you that this kid in the Nike shirt, one of my dearest, I ran across him and was standing on a down drug corner. And this just happened a couple in school. And relationships bitter. I went to his house and he happened to be sitting outside. And I walked right to him and I said, you know, I saw you. He said, I know you did. And we had a whole conversation about it, right? I will tell you those are the first eggs that our chickens laid, and we'd hatch them together. Kids loved eggs. I will tell you, permaculture crops, always strawberries. You can never grow enough strawberries for the children. Um, and I will say that it also changed their diet. You see what they're eating there. They did that in the school cafeteria and then came to me and asked, well, they wanted me to take a picture of it and wanted me to see what they were eating. This work makes a difference about medicine, right? Healing their bodies. And they took that information home and they bought information in from home. So literally by the time, you know, I never tallied all of the crops and trees that we were growing. I can tell you there's 45 trees in that garden today, everything from several varieties of figs. I will tell you, many of those trees, by the way, have been planted in memorial. So we were growing a garden that was meant to be a sanctuary, right? This particular picture, Birds Without Borders, if I think non-Californians know about Burning Man. It just ended last weekend. These were 350 people coming from Burning Man tradition and culture who did uh, permaculture action on this garden. And in one day, can we place that bridge there on the bottom? It was remarkable what you can do and achieve when you invite the community into you. What else would I tell you? This picture with the little girl on the horse says the whole thing that happened to West Oakland, or what happens in West Oakland in this garden. This gentleman, Andre, is from the Black Cowboys. They would come and let the kids do poems. And this baby girl lives in West Oakland. And I love the juxtaposition of who they are and how loving and in relationship they can be. And that's what happens when you grow a garden. I will tell you that it was not easy to bring teachers in, but that group in the math were teachers who were finally glad to be able to garden during the pandemic, right? And this garden saved our lives in that. We utilize remarkable partners. In this picture up in the front with the lady has the Raiders cap on. She's school's program director at Stop Waste. The next one is one of the best garden educators in the Bay Area. The woman behind me, it was a school council member. The man behind her is in charge of planting all of the trees in it. Under the archways, those are interns that we got through AmeriCorps program. The gentleman to the right, holding collard greens, is one of our school board members and a rep. So this food for would come and draw all of these people out regularly. We would have work parties of 150 people. Um, and the community grew better. Um, I love this pledge. I just want to give you a moment to read it. Um, but what I will say is that when you grow a garden and when you grow food forest, really what you're growing are people and the grown-ups. We learn to grow across culture. We learn to grow across species, right? Um, we learned about life. One of my favorite quick stories is I was telling kids that I was going to say goodbye to my dad. He was dying. And one of the baddest boys in the backest of the corner said, there goes that life cycle again. When you create a permaculture forest, you're creating the circle of life where these children live. And by being able to access it in their school day, they can then apply all of that learning to how they live in community with each other and how they live in community with nature. The stories are endless. The last one I'll tell you is this is a baby. It's the only chick that survived that we raised. His name was Solo. And the first two kids, all the kids were like, no, you can't let them hold the baby. They're going to kill the baby. And they were that kind of kid job. And then we just handed the chick Benton because Benton was that perfect child, right? That perfect Asian child does everything right, is always waiting for everybody else to be behaved. And he instantly dropped the chick. It was a wonderful learning for both be fallible for other kids. I know how to nurture something and love it. We all got to laugh about it. As you can see, this garden grew crazy from those first pictures, right? And love really did grow there. We put in a sink. We put in, this was an outdoor classroom. This is a water containment that collected water off of that solar roof and had a little uh knob so that the kids could fill their own water buckets. That middle picture is the day of the pandemic. And the pandemic taught us we need gardens. This is the day Oakland closed schools. Our kids weren't scared. They went home and all the herbs you need to survive. And they bravely went out into the unknown world. And it is in that moment that I knew I was living up to what victory asked me to do and that this was essential work. So if that I'll end and just say, growing food forests happens slowly across time. It probably took about 5 years to reach that last place. But no matter what happens, that garden keeps growing and giving, um, and can outlive all of us. And that's, I think, what we want to give to our kids. I'm good.
All right. Thank you so much, Wanda. I know you have so much more experience, so I have some questions for you in the Q&A time.
Okay, I'm ready.
I will pass it off to Debi and Eddie, who will continue this vision to all the way to Florida.
Thank you for the introduction. So yes, we're here in South Florida, and we're gonna focus a little bit more on canopy cover, establishing canopy cover in your food forest, and also some of the rules of thumb. So I'm gonna first hand it off to Debbie to give us some context about the program and all the different food forests that we have experience with.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we are located in Miami-Dade County, Florida. We are the third largest school district in the entire country now. Our school district has been very proactive in working with us. And so Eddie and I help over 71 schools in the county. 21 have edible gardens, and now we have transformed 30 of those schools into food forests. And we reach about 43,000 students every school year between the edible gardens and the upgraded food forests. So, and Miami-Dade County is a very large landmass. It's about 3 times the size of the state of Rhode Island for just our county. So we cover a lot of area. And Eddie?
Yep. And so, just to make sure we're all talking about the same thing, because we've noticed over time, people define food forests in so many different ways. We basically boiled it down to 4 different design elements that had to exist in every food forest, or at least rules that you're trying to be guided by when you're designing these food forests. And the first one is that they're mostly perennials. So the majority of your plants should be a perennial based system, which continues to grow and grow year after year, as was mentioned earlier. We're trying to establish habitat, so it's not just a space for people, but for other creatures to come and join in on the space. And we also have a biodiversity that we encourage. So we're not doing monocrops. We're growing a huge blend of different types of plants in the spaces that we manage. And also we manage 5 different layers of plants. So it's a multi-layered system that is in every food forest. Okay, next slide. And just so you get an idea, these are the types of spaces that we go into. From standpoint of canopy, there's definitely plenty of space here for a food forest, but you can already see that there's some seating underneath that nice specimen tree. So there's some shade area already created there. And one important thing in South Florida is establishing more areas with shade and using these spaces, turning them into educational, useful spaces for students. So this is what the after looks like when we go in and install and completely transform the space. So you can see how we have extended, the canopy in this school. There's pathways, there's planting islands now, there's different layers all growing together, so it mimics a natural forest, but still is something that's usable for a teaching space.
And then we have a short video that we want to share with you that kind of just explains the program and what we do in the schools.
The wind is blowing in your face. The sun is shining down on you. The birds are singing their sweet melody. This isn't an average classroom, nor an average garden. It's a food forest.
Where kids are transported into a wild place, where banana trees grow tall and passion fruits hang down, where science and math come to life and food doesn't feel foreign. This is a place where kids come to learn, explore, and connect. This is Food Forest for Schools.
So yeah, just a short snippet. One of our interns last year was studying filmography and was able to create this wonderful video for us. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about, so we do have canopy trees that we have in the schools. Sometimes we're a little loose in what we consider a tree or a woody stem. Like for students, bananas are tall. We consider those kind of trees for the kids. We have created these cards that go home with the students and for the parents to understand. We harvest what's grown at the schools and we send it home with them to their families for use. Sometimes the kids are just eating them in the classrooms, but we do want to increase knowledge. And so I created, with my chef background, it has a snippet about the nutritional benefits of the trees and the fruits that we grow in the schools. And it also shows how you can integrate it into your diet in a short, small way. Nobody wants to read huge pamphlets coming home from their students. You know, it's a lot. So we made them very short and sweet and educational. And the QR code here on the page, if you click on that, it'll take you to our website. And we also have signage in the schools that if the parents scan the QR codes, it takes them to our website, which gives them a little bit more information on the trees that we grow.
Yep. So we had talked a little bit about layers and establishing different layers in the food forest. So obviously the canopy layer is going to be up at the top, but we also have our sub canopy, which adds some density, and each layer that you add on makes that density thicker. So you're getting less and less light reaching down to the bottom layers. So that's just something to think about when you're establishing this. But these are the 5 layers that we always manage in every single food forest: is the canopy, the subcanopy, a bush layer, and then a herbaceous layer, which are usually plants that reach about knee height. And then we have the ground cover layer, which is pretty much like a living mulch cover. And we have, oh, go ahead, Debbie.
No, okay, I couldn't remember if you or I doing this one. So we also have the understory plants. So, you know, while we do have the trees, we do try to have some plants that grow under the trees. And these are just some of the perennials that we grow in the schools that the students really like. And they can be, most of these can be translated into most climates, like basil, lemongrass, the Cuban oregano, which is very popular here in South Florida, cranberry hibiscus. It has a cranberry tart flavor that the students love. And then Mujan tea, which is a bush that comes out of the middle islands of the Bahamas. So it's very demographically relevant to our students. And it's a verbena and very calming for the students. So even if they're feeling stressed at school, they can go out and smell the Mujan and help calm themselves down. Especially we have coping exercises about tests and using the plants that we grow in the food forest to help them control their emotions and calm down and not be so stressed going into tests. Was there anything else you wanted to say, Eddie?
Just that it's when you are considering canopy and a food forest, it's important that you choose plants that are tolerant to shade. It's something to take into consideration. And that actually leads us perfectly into tree spacing, because the spacing, and by the way, the design on the right is one of our latest food forests that we installed before planting the other layers. That's just with the canopy layer. So it was perfect to illustrate, the spacing. And this is in a courtyard. So it's a kind of a thin, long space that we had to deal with. So you can see that a lot of the canopies are just tall palms there, but we're also using, other trees that will fill in more, but not go into the building and actually damage the structure. So, and to create light and to actually allow some of that light to enter into the bottom layers so you can grow more. I know that in some of the northern climates, the days get a lot shorter than they tend to get here in South Florida. Like our shortest, and a difference between the shortest and the longest day is only a couple of hours. And northern climates, it can be a difference of maybe 8 hours. So there can be some, reduced sunlight. So for that matter, you may want to space your trees out a little more. And a rule of thumb is that the size of your canopy, so the diameter, or the radius of your canopy, can be pretty much the spacing that you use in between the different trees, or half of the radius to close it in to get them closer, and that allows less light through. So for us, we like to establish a little bit more canopy, because we just have so much sunlight. But in this particular case, there was just a sliver of sunlight, so we didn't want to build up too much canopy. And that also leads into tree shapes. So when you're planting, people sometimes tend to not think about that some trees spread out a lot more than others. And in that last example, you saw we had a thin corridor. So we focused more on using the tree on the top right, which is a bay variety. So we plant several bay varieties. They're very, highly wind resistant. They're great for our climate down here in South Florida. And in this case, it was a perfect tree to use for that space because it wasn't going to spread out into the hallways and into the upstairs hallway. And then there was a rounder tree in the background, which is actually a mulberry tree that created a little bit more shade so we could have the outdoor classroom under it. And that's similar to the shape of that moringa tree that you see beneath it. So both of these trees have edible leaf crops. We harvest the leaves and distribute that and harvest with the
Um,
students. So as far as tree size and scale, you're thinking of the people that are going to occupy that space, right? So, and also the functionality of those trees. So if it's something that you're going to be harvesting, you need it to be reachable, and you need those trees to be down to more to a human scale, which also helps to be, to make it more manageable. If you're going to be managing a canopy, you can see the difference on that diagram on the left between the tree in the middle, which is about the size that we're looking for, and the tree on the right, which is just 10 feet more, which is about a 35-foot tree. So we try to max out at about 25 feet in canopy height. You can see what a huge difference a 35-foot tree is when it comes to maintenance and how much thicker that canopy will be. And especially when you're working with little ones in the schools. Also these are the dimensions that you're looking at when you're looking at a tree. So not just the shape, but you actually want to have an idea of how large that diameter of the crown is going to be, because that is going to spread out to that diameter. So you're going to need to space it correctly with any buildings that you might have. A rule of thumb for that is that any tree that's about 25 feet tall, you need at least 15 to 12 feet of distance from a building. And then you also, so the tree height is really important also in that case to calculate many of the dimensions. But your diameter, remember, is also going to help you for your spacing. That's where your drip line is. So the edge of that crown of the tree is where the irrigation happens. And when it rains, that's where the drip line is going to be. It's very important to be aware of this because you don't want that drip line to be anywhere like in a hallway where or anywhere that you don't want water to be. And also paying attention to trunk height. We spoke about that a little bit. So you don't want a trunk height that's too high if you're going to be harvesting from that tree. You want a slightly lower trunk height. And the trunk height is also important for leaving some space underneath for planting because you're going to be adding bushes. The other layers that we talked about need to go in that space. So that's important to take into account. And the root zone, of course, for when you're designing your area, your planting islands, you want to make sure that you leave enough room inside that planting island for the roots. You can see a lot of times when cities plant trees, they don't leave a lot of space for the roots, and the tree is not healthy. It doesn't grow a full canopy. So it's important. And that rule of thumb is about half of the height of your tree should be the radius of your root zone. Okay. And here you can see an example of the planting islands. The way that it's mapped out, that are the main trees are mapped out inside and spaced out inside the planting islands to make sure that we have some canopy cover and some shade across the entire space. In this case, some of those trees were already existing. Actually, most of those trees were already existing, so that made it a lot more difficult to plan. But we wanted to show that it is possible to try to save and conserve as much as what's already on your landscape. You don't want to go in and clear cut and chop everything down, especially a specimen tree that could be, you know, a beautiful tree that builds habitat and shade to your space. So we try to preserve as much as we can when we go in and design these spaces.
Some other considerations that we take into account when we're planting the food forest, you know, like Eddie was saying, the canopy density, you know, while it's great to have great shade, you still need some sunlight coming through because there's not a lot of plants that can grow, understory plants that can grow in full shade. So, you know, you do want some, at least some dappled sunlight getting through. So those tree shapes and sizes really come into consideration for that. Plan for the growth rate, like plan for what the tree will be when it's fully grown, not for when you first plant it. I think a lot of times we get excited when we first plant things, and then we plant things a little too closely together, and we don't think about, you know, the 5-6 years for that tree to fully grow. We also, for us in South Florida, we plant a lot of leaf crop trees, like Eddie was saying, the moringa, the bays. You want the students to be able to reach the leaves of those trees. So we don't always lift our trees, and sometimes we actually top our trees. So we keep them on a smaller scale that the students can reach them, touch them, smell them, taste them, just by reaching up and keeping them within a reasonable height for the students to be able to interact with them. And lastly, fruiting season. Everybody asks if we put mango trees in our schools, and ironically, we don't encourage mango trees because they fruit about 2 weeks after students get out of school for the summer. And I just feel like it's a little bit of a tease for students to watch the fruit grow, and then they leave. And we end up leaving a mess for maintenance crews, and we always try to make friends with our maintenance staff. So, you know, we don't want something that's going to fruit once students are out of school, and that will drop the fruit all over the schoolyard and leave a big mess for the janitorial staff or maintenance staff to have to pick up and clean up. And we also don't want to invite any kind of small rodents into the school that would be interested in eating the rotting fruit. So those are just a lot of considerations that we take into account. I know we're getting short on time, so I just want to quickly talk about the classrooms. We do try to have some shaded areas in all of our food forests for a classroom, but in the middle section here, you notice there's some trees off to the side, and they're in kind of a little bit of a clearing. We do like to have a circle gathering area for the students, and that sometimes is a little bit more cleared out so that the students can gather and observe the clouds or do what other exercises they're doing that day. And we integrate a lot of the science and math into our lessons that we do with the students, such as taking the temperature and the sun in the shade. Some of the math that we do would be to count the leaves on a particular branch and then estimate how many branches are on the tree, and then calculate that into possible, like, an estimated number of leaves on the entire tree. So that's different ways of how we incorporate science and math into what we do in the food forest. Everything that we do when we're outside is connected with a standard, which you can see if you go to the QR code and those modules. Everything is, so, you know, the administrators, we get a lot less pushback if what the teachers are doing outside, you know, corresponds to what they should be teaching in the classroom. We just have it in an outdoor classroom.
Yep, and we really encourage, you know, especially the teachers to check out these activities. They're, like Debbie said, everything is aligned with the curriculum. So it's pretty much all laid out with, including some of them even have worksheets. They have evaluations attached to them. There's also resiliency that we're going to be adding to this. Resiliency modules that are going to be added on soon, so you can at least go check out the website now with the math and the science modules with what we already have. And we do not believe in creating more work for teachers. So this is not something in addition to what have to do in the classroom. This is something that replaces what you're already doing with an outdoor activity. It's tied to the curriculum. You have your lesson plans already done for you, and also worksheets that are there so that you can have a grade for your students. So, it's very comprehensive, and you can choose to do whatever portion of it fits what you're doing.
That's it. I hope we didn't go too far over, Lauren.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eddie and Debbie. That was great, great detailed information. And thank you, Wanda, also for setting the stage. A couple questions that came up that I think are very important are this one is for both groups, and that has to do with creating multi-layered food forests and gardens, but also in a way that doesn't bring up any concerns about supervision or lines of sight. A lot of people ask us about kids hiding in the bushes and things like that. Well, we would, love and encourage kids to feel like they're immersed. If you have any issues with other staff, how have
Yeah,
you addressed that?
we can definitely take that question. We've actually had to deal with that. And at first, we were using the fences in the schools also to grow a vine layer, and to make the fence also beautiful and filled with plants. But they asked us for security purposes. They actually want the resource officers to be able to patrol around the schools and see through the fences. So we do not plant anything on fences to create, to have that visibility. Also for the understory, and it's more of an issue with the bush layer and the subcanopy layer. When it's something that's like a thick, it might be a taller bush, or a plant that grows in a cluster and blocks visibility. What we do is we thin everything out. So we have rules for maintenance where it has to be shoulder height for the bushes, so you can at least see over the tops of them. And also, they're not too close together. We thin it out enough so that you can at least see in between the bushes.
Okay. Wanda, I see you nodding
And
your head.
right. Well, I'm laughing because yes, I've been told we need to be able to see into the schoolyard, but I've also been asked to and have needed to sort of shelter the schoolyard from what's going on the other side of the fence. So I would give a kind of, it depends. My favorite thing to grow on fences and schoolyards is chayote, because they will grow long and far. It's a perennial plant, and people and neighbors can pick from both sides of the fence. So that's kind of and it's not vining all year round. So in the wintertime, you've got clear view. So that would be one thing. But the food forest that I grew did have a lot of, even if you were out in the garden, there would be places that you couldn't see what kids are doing. And mostly what I found are that kids just want to be playing and weren't doing. I mean, we might call the stolen kiss a problem, right? But I don't have to get too freaked about that. There was the day that everything got quiet. You couldn't find a kid, and there were 3 adults out there. And I said, I don't know where everybody is, but somebody should come and tell us what's going on. And they sent over one kid and they said, we're having a wedding. And I was like, what? You're having a wedding? And what does that mean? Their boyfriend, girlfriend? They're like, ew, no, we're playing, right? So places that are cozy and hidden, I understand the adult concern, but I also know what lies in the wildness. And then the last thing I'll say is that at all schools that I've been in, the bigger issue is getting the adults who are monitoring playtime to be willing not to stand together with each other to talk. Because if one person stays on the blacktop and one person goes back by the garden, we've got it all covered. So we raise that as an issue, and we also schedule our fellows and our interns to be out in our gardens during recess, so it's not an issue.
That's great, Wanda. Thank you for sharing that little story too.
Yeah.
I've also heard anecdotes from people saying that, kids are actually quite, if there's something going on, they know to tell an adult. That's also an important lesson to teach kids. So I know all three of you have a lot of experience with working alongside maintenance staff, district maintenance staff. And so if there's anything you could share about, generally speaking, what you do about maintenance, the relationship with maintenance staff, how they're involved or not involved. Someone is also asking about during the first few years as the plants are getting established, again, who's doing the watering and maintaining. Yeah, whatever you can share in just a couple minutes.
Sure. Yeah. As far as maintenance staff, we find that it differs from school site to school site, and largely depending on just the environment in that school. Sometimes the people in that school want to get more involved, and in that case, sometimes the maintenance staff is happy to have those spaces, and they want to grow the food, and they want to be involved, and they even start to bring in plants and nurture them and water the space and all that. But we have other spaces where they really don't want to be involved at all. They may see it as additional work that they're not being told by the upper level administrators that's something that they should be involved in. And there's also the learning curve, right? They might not even know what those plants are that we're bringing in. There's a huge learning curve when it comes to maintenance of a food forest. So basically what we try to do when we install a food forest is make it so that we're not getting in the way of maintenance, that they can still ride if they have a riding mower, they don't want to switch to how they're mowing the lawn. So we make sure that the lawn spaces, they can still ride their mower, that they can still do the edging and the trimming the way that they used to for other hedges and stuff like that. So we kind of try to stay out of their way, and sometimes we'll provide them with tools if we can at the school sites to so that'll encourage them to assist with some of the maintenance at least.
Yeah, and I think a little, a little honey goes a long way. Like, ask them what they want planted in the food forest. Sometimes, they love okra, which grows over the summer, and a lot of times the maintenance staff is the only ones at the schools in the summer. So grow what they want to eat and tell them to harvest whatever they want. Sometimes they don't realize that they're welcome in that space as well. So if they see bananas that are ripe, or if they see fruit that's ripe, to take it, to use it. Like Eddie said, sometimes they're just grumpy because they need a tool that the school system's not providing them. So sometimes just loppers or a pruner or a specialized tool makes their life easier, and then they're much more favorable towards working with us.
Yeah, and we do have a
I
maintenance
feed
team
them,
that.
and I'm really nice.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I feed them, and I'm really nice to them, and really make sure that we're building a partner and a relationship one-to-one. So that even when they have to tell me, look, I can't do that because the union contract says this, that I can understand that and that we can work together. And then in terms of the maintenance, automatically irrigate school gardens. I mean, absolutely let kids water, but they're not always really, really effective. And an unwatered garden, fails, and then everybody's sad. So I see that as a sort of essential where it's possible. Where it's not, I get it, but automatic irrigation.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that, we do have a team of people that we train that assist with the hand maintenance, pulling weeds and doing the harvesting because it's 30 different school sites. So, we have a team of people, and that's opened up the opportunity to even creating a stepping stone for students that want to be in environmental jobs and, later maybe create a career out of it. So it has created that opportunity for us also, the whole maintenance thing.
Um, I know we are at time. So just to wrap up, that's all really great advice. I'm going to pop in the chat a link to our Green Schoolyards America. We have a document on maintenance that includes advice from some of the people in the room here. All great advice. I also would encourage those that are in attendance here to please again check out Wanda's organization Common Vision. There's a lot of information there, including about your orchard program, and then a link again to
And
Debi and Eddie's
and can I shout
program.
out Wanda's Garden School? Yep. Mama Wanda's
And
Garden School on YouTube is a series of 10-minute videos with puppets and me talking about various aspects of school gardening. And the kids like them. A lot of read aloud books as well.
yes, we'll remember to include that with the recording, your wonderful YouTube channel, Wanda. We'll wrap up there. Please join us next time on October 3rd, where we'll talk about schools and air quality impacts. Again, thank you for all of your questions, your interest, the work that you're each doing in your own communities. And yeah, one last thank you to Wanda, Debi, and Eddie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.